So yambo bibia kwaba na yemfo Mbramege TV and platform we so. Quick one, the list of Yera President John Dramani Mahama, the 5-member committee a review petitions against the Chief Justice Madam Tokono. Room quick one now. Kuti Sembia Uncle Kwesi Pratt so ediato you say President John Mahama has constituted a 5-member committee to investigate petitions against the Chief Justice of Ghana. Okay, see the committee composed of eminent figures from the legal, military, academic, and public sectors will conduct a thorough inquiry into the allegations. Enti quick one yenko na yenhwe mpanyimfo na omo edi mu akoten. First of all, say Justice Gabriel Scott Waman, the Dean Ono chairman, Edma, a seasoned justice of the Supreme Court. Yes. Second, Justice Samuel Kwame Adibu Asiedu, another respected justice of the Supreme Court. Justice Adibu is known for his impartiality and commitment to upholding the rule of law. And third, there will be a bonidin much more on the case biako ama madam no wa drebo pen Daniel Yao Demlevo, the former Auditor General, renowned for his anti-corruption stance and rigorous approach to accountability, adds a layer of investigative rigor to the committee. And fourth, Major Flora Bazimula Edini de Mumfanchem Dalugo, also representing the Ghana Armed Forces. Major Dalugo brings a disciplined and structured perspective to the proceedings. Her military background underscores the committee's emphasis on integrity and due to processes. And the last one, Professor James Sefa, Zisa, Professor James Sefa Zisa, an associate professor at the University of Ghana. Professor Zisa contributes academic insight and analytical depth to the committee. All right, so we are Sema, and I say we are the 5-member committee. Yera John Dramani Mahama with me aseti. And quick one, Yonkoti Uncle Kwesi Pratt Jr. and Semno said the way I dive into it. Now what church and name be what you say. Amaya say, oh, good morning, Ghana show. So young for credit and for Metro TV, Yanko na Yankoti say ni be a copy of it.
I haven't heard yet anybody make a case of constitutional violation against the president. Nobody has made that case. So there is no constitutional violation as far as I'm concerned. But I think it is not correct also just to dwell on the constitutional provisions in these matters. Because beyond the constitutional provisions are questions of public morality and so on, which may not be in black and white and so on. They are matters which ought to be discerned and so on. So as far as the Constitution is concerned, there is no infraction. Now, there is talk of precedent, this setting a very dangerous precedent. And I'm completely lost. Because I recall that a couple of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and so on, all of us continuously made the point that the impeachment of public officers, those who hold constitutionally designed positions, ought to be done carefully. Otherwise, it will set a precedent. And I remember us making this case very strongly in the Charlotte Osei case. Charlotte Osei and others. We made it so strongly. It was ignored. Now, if some precedent was set, that precedent has been set already. It is not new. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
That precedent has been set already. Now, I recall very clearly that at the time, the argument which was made in support of the president's actions was that the office of the president in matters of this nature only acts as a post office box. That argument was made very strongly.
A conveyor belt.
A conveyor belt. And that when the president receives a petition, he cannot do anything about it but forward it to the Council of State, and then all the actions are triggered. That was the argument which was made. Now, surprisingly, when President Akufo-Addo got a petition against the sitting Chief Justice calling for her removal, he took a decision not to act on it.
Yes.
You understand? So if the earlier position was correct, how come that in the case of the Chief Justice, he did not act? Because in his view, the petition did not have merit. In the president's view, the petition did not have merit.
There was a second reason.
Yeah.
The second reason was that you're talking about the Professor Kwekwaza one. He said Professor Kwekwaza had made it public, and that in itself was against the rules of the game.
Whatever it is,
yes,
the president could make a decision not to proceed.
Yes.
Earlier we had been told that he had no option but to act.
So your question is which is which?
No, that's not exactly my question. What I'm saying is that if the president acts differently, in the case of Charlotte Osei, from his position of the Chief Justice, it does suggest a certain bias. And out of that bias may arise a suspicion of political coloring and so on. Okay, so all these things happened before President Mahama assumed office. Now, my brother here, Honorable Eugene Entry, made the point that the provisions of the Constitution, actually the language of the Constitution says that the president may act, and that it does appear that the president is acting as if the provisions of the Constitution are mandatory. I've taken the trouble to look at Article 146.
10. It's 11. What are 11?
146, 10.
11.
And 11.
I've taken the trouble to look at 146.
Okay.
And if you look at Article 146, may is used only twice in Article 146. It is used in 2, where it says that a justice of the Superior Court of Judicature or chairman of the regional tribunal may only be removed in accordance with the procedure specified in this article. That's the first time may is used. May is also used in 10, where it says, where a petition has been referred to a committee under this article, the president may.
It's also used in 11, so 3 times.
Okay, so 3 times, no problem.
Yes,
3 times. The president may, in the case of the Chief Justice, acting in accordance with the advice of the Council of State by warrant signed by him, suspend the Chief Justice and so on. And my attention is drawn to the fact that it is also used in 11, which is correct. So the president may at any time revoke a suspension under this article. That's interesting. Now, if you look at 3, it says clearly, the tribunal, it says that the president, if the president receives a petition for the removal of a Chief Justice of a Superior Court, other than the Chief Justice, or for the removal of the chairman of a regional tribunal, he shall refer the petition to the Chief Justice, who shall determine whether there is a prima facie case or not. 4, when the Chief Justice decides that there is a prima facie case, he shall, again shall is used. And then 5, The committee appointed under clause 4 of this article shall investigate the complaint and shall make its recommendations to the Chief Justice, who shall forward it to the President. Then 6. Where the petition is for the removal of the Chief Justice, the President shall, acting in accordance with the Council of State, appoint a committee consisting of so and so and so and so. So shall is used again. Then 7. The committee appointed under clause 6 of this article shall inquire into the petition and recommend. 8. All proceedings under this article shall be held in camera. 9. The President shall, in each case, act in accordance with the recommendations of the committee. And then 10 and 11. So it is clear that some of the President's actions in this matter actually spring from a constitutional obligation. He has no, he has no middle way. These are constitutional injunctions on the President, presidential duties imposed on him by the Constitution. So that is very, very clear. Now, all of us, or many people, are talking about the contents of the 3 petitions that went to the President. I count 4, because I count the petition also from Professor Kwesi Pratt as 1 petition. So 4. And then I ask myself, what is it with this Chief Justice that for the first time in our history, 4 petitions go to the presidency for her removal? Something must be wrong. What is it? Is it her conduct? What is it which is wrong, which has necessitated 4 petitions for her removal? That for me, it's interesting. Now, because of the constitutional injunction that the contents of the petitions and the processes for deciding whether she should be removed or not.
Apparently, sorry for rudely interrupting. Annie just drew my attention. Apparently, it's 5, not even 4, 5 petitions.
Okay. Yeah. Makes my case even stronger.
Yeah, 5 petitions.
Okay. But the point I'm making simply is this. The Constitution itself is very clear that these should be held, this should be done in confidence. The petition itself needs not be disclosed to the public. The hearing itself ought to be in camera. There's a reason why the Constitution did that. And the only reason I can fathom is that the Constitution did not want a situation where vexatious and frivolous petitions can be sent to the President, made public, to damage the image of a person who may not be removed at the end of the process as Chief Justice. And therefore, it was important, as the constitutional drafters saw it, to keep it secret, to keep it in confidence, so that the Chief Justice may not suffer undue reputational damage. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
I get it.
Yes. So now, we are being told about contents of petitions, and you and I have no way of verifying whether they are the true contents of the petitions.
Yeah.
Now, who is doing that? Who is deliberately disrespecting the provisions of the Constitution? Is it the Chief Justice herself? Because these contents can only be reviewed.
The Chief Justice or the presidency. Don't add it.
No, hold on. Sure. I was making the point.
Sure.
It is either the Chief Justice herself or the presidency. You understand?
No,
but hold on.
Permission to continue.
No. Interestingly, the presidency has protested about these public disclosures. The president, in a letter to the Chief Justice, has questioned why she has made confidential materials public.
You know the Chief Justice's response to the president has not been leaked.
How do you know?
That's intriguing. It's not out there. It's not out there. It's only the petitions that have been leaked. But the Chief Justice's response to the presidency has not been leaked.
Well, I'm not sure.
I'm telling you.
The fact that you haven't seen it doesn't mean that it has
It's not,
been
because we would have seen it or heard it by now.
No.
Okay.
you can't tell.
Okay, the purpose of the program, let's continue.
Yes. But what has been leaked? Who is leaking it? Is it the Chief Justice? Because right now, on record, she's the only person who has leaked information about this process.
Oh.
Yes, that's a fact. Known, proven. Known and proven. I'm not talking about rumors. Known and proven.
What did she leak?
Do you remember President John Mahama's letter to her, in which he complained that her response or her request for permission to respond to the allegations against her was leaked? You remember?
And that she did it in bad faith.
Yes, and that she did it in bad faith.
Yeah.
So, in terms of proving record and so on, she's the only person who we can say for sure has leaked aspects of this process. You cannot say that President Mahama's office has leaked any information. There's no proof of it and so on. But in the case, it does appear that she actually wrote a letter which was copied to certain individuals and institutions and so on. So it does raise this question. And I think if that is the case, it is unfair to her. And if she did it, she herself has been unfair to herself. You understand? Now, I agree with my brother here that those political office holders, and it doesn't matter whether they are NDC or MPP, who are engaged in public commentary on the process and actually making statements which prejudge the issues, are in contempt of a judicial process. This is a judicial process. This is a complete judicial process. So when you have people sitting on radio and television pronouncing the guilt of the Chief Justice or her innocence, and it does not matter whether they are MPP or NDC, they are clearly in breach of the Constitution and they are in contempt of a judicial process. That's my position.
And it's a very sound position.
Well, but that is my position. They are in breach. They are in contempt, clear contempt, and so on. I would have liked a situation where everybody went silent and allowed the processes to take place. You understand? Now, what would have happened if the president had refused to take action? The president himself would have been in breach of the Constitution.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So once the petition goes before the president, one way or the other, has to act, or he himself breaches his oath of office and the Constitution. So the president has done nothing wrong. Everything the president has done is clean. So now, you see, I have a problem. Yes, it is true that all chief justices will be appointed by one president or the other. It is true. Okay? All justices of the Supreme Court will be appointed by one president or the other. And as he says, the mere fact that the president appoints a judge of the Supreme Court is not sufficient grounds for establishing political bias. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
I understand.
It's not sufficient ground for establishing political bias. What happens? And the public is not foolish. You understand? Those who sit in the Supreme Court, when they went to law school, they had mates, classmates. Maybe even in the examinations, their classmates did better than them, and so on. So they don't know the law better than all the 32 million people in this country. There are people who know the law
and who teach the law,
and people who taught them the law, who are still alive, and so on. Okay. So when they go to the Supreme Court and they sit on panels to adjudicate cases, they must understand that amongst the 32 million people are people who know the law and who understand how the law should operate. So when they twist and turn, it becomes obvious, even to the untutored. You understand what I'm saying? So invariably, it is their conduct on the bench which shows their biases. Now, they have a duty to themselves, the Constitution and the people of Ghana, to the extent that is possible, not to display their biases as insignia of honor. Because if they do that, they get us to the situation where we have no choice but to insist that the proper things must be done. And in that case, they cannot blame anybody but themselves. Now, I'm not saying that bias by itself is something which is unhealthy and which we should not countenance and so on. The mere fact that when the Supreme Court sits, sometimes there's a panel of 5. It's an admission that as human beings, they have their biases, as all of us do have our biases.
Right.
So 5 people sit in order to ensure that these biases are balanced and that at the end of the day, the decisions which are arrived at are reasonable, are in tune with the Constitution, and so forth and so on. You understand what I'm saying? So bias by itself is not a problem. But what is deliberately skewed in order to achieve an end which is unjustifiable, which constitutes injustice, then bias becomes a problem.
Right.
I hope you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
So all of us have watched these Supreme Court judges display over some time. You understand? We've seen them displaying over some time. Now, my brother, I have seen the results of the survey done by Global Info Analytics. And I think that it is one of the most credible research institutions in this country today.
Right.
And I've seen that 52% of the population, without reading the content of the petitions, came to the conclusion that the Chief Justice must go. That's a huge statement. It's a statement about public perception, but it is weighty. What has the Chief Justice done? To the extent that even without knowing the contents of the petition against her, 52% of the population think that she must go. That is not all. If you look at the results of the survey, 83% of persons who identify themselves as MDC want her to go. And I think less than 40%, I've forgotten the actual figure, of MPP people want her to stay. That itself is a statement about where we are today. It's a clear statement about where we are today. Now, the Chief Justice herself does not help herself at all in this matter.
How so?
And I'm not talking about her guilt or her innocence. I'm talking about the aesthetics of the case. This matter goes to court. All her lawyers are known to be MPP members of persons who are close to the MPP. How come? Are there no lawyers who are perceived to be independent of these political parties who are capable of handling her case? Are there no such lawyers? I wonder. Now, this process is triggered, and the minority actually holds press conferences and say she must stay there. Is that not politicization? What impression does that give? And my brother here is talking about statements made by Mr. Asedun Ketia and Sami Jemfi and others. Exactly. Doesn't that also give the process some political coloring? I mean, I am very, very deeply worried about the extent of politicization in this country. And I'm very worried. Partisan politicization. And one of the alarm bells rang for me when President Akufo-Addo actually went to the extent of appointing PROs for state institutions. I mean, it just killed me completely. And in those days, if you remember, I think you were a regular panelist on this program.
PROs for
Ghana Gas.
Oh, PROs for state institutions.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, you know, he
I didn't hear you,
personally
sir.
wrote a letter.
Yeah.
Are you part of the panel or
Sorry?
you are hosting?
No, I'm just,
Okay, so let's make it case.
no, I'm just telling you what he said. Because he said you are not too sure of. And I said, no, I
No,
remember.
I was going to pay attention. That's why I said I wanted to
So
know.
I wanted him to pay more attention. That's what I had to come
So
out.
at that stage, I became alarmed.
Yes.
And I said, what if other presidents follow suit?
Right.
We are going to get to a situation where if you are not a member of the NDC or a member of the NPP, you are condemned to unemployment. And that situation is clearly unacceptable. We cannot accept that. We cannot run Ghana on that basis. This extreme, and the last time I used the word and many people complained that I was too harsh and so on. But how else can I describe this situation without using the word foolish or stupid? Somebody must tell me how you can run a country on which you can only get a job, even a middle level job, sometimes very low class job, only on the basis of which party identity card you hold. How can we run a nation like that? Okay, so this politicization has been going on. It is going on. It is beginning to reflect in everything we do as a nation. And I'm extremely worried about that. Okay. Right now, the process has gotten to the third stage. Okay. The president referred the matter to the Council of State. Indeed, the Chief Justice was given a 10-day opportunity to respond to the petition. I think it's also been forwarded to the Council of State. The Council of State has decided that there's a prima facie case. Following that, the president has set up the 5-member committee according to the provisions of the Constitution. 2 judges, one of whom must be chairperson, and 3 persons who should not be lawyers, who should not be members of parliament, and who should not be ordinary citizens, and so on. I think what the president has done is constitutional and needs to be respected. The president also has taken the provisions of the Constitution seriously, which allow him to suspend the Chief Justice whilst the investigations are going on. Okay? And it makes a lot of sense for the Chief Justice to be suspended. Because if the Chief Justice is not suspended, what if matters related to the case are filed at the Supreme Court? Is she the person going to empanel them? It raises all kinds of complications. So she herself must understand why she cannot continue to be Chief Justice while these matters are being heard. Now, I want to be very honest about what has happened. I know at least one of the judges on this 5-member committee. And I can say with certainty, somebody I've known for 40 years or more, that is upright, honest, sincere, and is not likely to be swayed by political influence. I know him, one person, and I can vouch.
We know who you are referring to.
Well, I haven't mentioned any
But we
name.
know.
If you know, it's even better. But I can vouch for his integrity. Okay. Now, a lot of people have said that Mr. Domelevo sent a case to the Supreme Court. In their view, it was not handled expeditiously and he lost his job and so on. I happen also to know Mr. Domelevo. Happen to know him fairly well. And unless he has changed, he would not be swayed by personal considerations. I am 100% sure that he would not be swayed by personal considerations. There are others that I don't know. But I don't have to know all of them. And indeed, it is not my judgment of the personalities which is important. It is the public perception, and indeed, is the integrity which is at stake.
Okay.
At the end of the day, we will be sure about what decisions they make and would interpret those decisions in the light of what we know.
Okay.
Because even at the end of the process, we will still not know what the allegations against the Chief Justice were.
True.
Even at the end of the process, we will still not know.
Yeah.
So on what basis are we going to make those crucial judgments as to whether she has been treated fairly or not treated fairly?
Right.
But then immediately, as my brother here did, there's an extension to this case. There are those who are saying that, oh, if the president is allowed to succeed with this one, he will then move on to the Electoral Commission.
I should have said it.
Well, but many others have said the same thing.
No, but, well,
Many others have
I heard
said
him
the
say
same
it.
thing. Okay.
Yes.
Now, this is my position. My position is very clear. If indeed it is true that something has happened at the office of the Chief Justice warranting her removal, and she's removed, and there is evidence, clear evidence, that a similar thing or something as weighty as what is happening in the Chief Justice office has also happened in the Electoral Commission, why shouldn't the Electoral Commissioner go home?
Okay.
Why shouldn't she go home simply because the Chief Justice has been removed? You understand?
Right.
So the issue is not whether or not people on the Electoral Commission, especially its chairman, may face similar processes. The issue is whether or not there is conduct which will warrant the triggering of this process.
All right.
Or not. That's the issue.
Okay.
If there is conduct which would warrant it, then it must be triggered.
All right.
That's all.
All right.
Right, so that is it. Inti we nsema Uncle Kwesi Pratt so odia to Ibra. And I've stated it clearly on this platform. Say Madam Tokunu, in her own will, no, she can choose to resign because already read the article be out the allegations in the petition against her, no, in fact, it is forced. It is forced. Sana mamini kan oso mo boa enye no corridor. Enye no corridor. Enti mami no is like so now ofili se adwuma no obeye. But baby adru die mami Tokunu. Eka yewra John Mahama nkwa dia I said earlier no. Enka adwuma no betwa so. But no kwasem ni say those around him and the petitioner Ghana for their kujana no, he can't do what? He can't just overlook it and drop it just like that. He has to react. And muma yenkai se yewra John the many Mahama e wo honum so besum Ghana. Wa mesum ni party, wa mesum sebi ono ankasa na busunya on ne ho. Na mum obesom Ghana. Inti se so far petitions are against this Chief Justice. I have 5 petitions, and it is record breaking. It has never happened in our what political history. Say Chief Justice Bibebaso. Now about 5 petitions have been raised against her to be removed from office. It has never happened in our history, our democracy after 1992 against that. This is the first time it happened. So let us all ask ourselves, what is the secret? Adientia sama mi wenkwa ni petitions no as many as 5. Umemisa ye ho na yengu nkomponko ye chi dwumadie ben enudi ye say no see treaty the judicial system no. In fact, under Mamu leadership no, or my judicial system no so predictable. And I've said it. Say obit me the assembly court. At the end of the day, no, we na cite our eye on it. Say this is how our case in Ebeko. And lo and behold, it is exactly what and I say that is how a Ghana for a budget, the same as how it will go. It tells you the incompetency, the corruption level, and the favoritism are not a war judicially horror. You see, Ghana for be say they have no interest in our judicial system because this woman brought insanity to our judicial system. And I think say she has started gripping it, and the time will come up, and very soon I know say by the close of this committee's report, na maame no we're headed towards, from the office. I want me then and any human view. And MPP for they know it. They know it. That this woman, she is not going to continue with the work. So they almost suspending suspension no. It will come with removal gently. Now our partners in a BB to me across. That is how and also it's Uncle Kwesi Pratt and I yet in Casa or church in Semu at the Achayano. And I hope Semunian ye kama, yes, or Potoya, Potokasa or the mile. What I say, that is the English version. It is simple. Domlevo and a year one of the members are controversial. The same Domlevo, he is part of the oral team. So it tells you, say Domlevo, the level of competency is high, and the level of integrity when it comes to fighting corruption, he is exceptional. That is why you are John Mahama at any point in time, Biano or Pilbia Maya efa corruption, he is part of the committee. So Mubeka ya Domlevo. The mother serpent of corruption, and I'm a say Domrivo and I'm at Nemidu. Okay, I think the Domrivo is time to be corrected. Why not? So Domrivo no a former attorney general and I'm at Amidu a special prosecutor. So I think say Martin Amidu and a the mother serpent of corruption. That is how it is. And ampa da poncheni bi woni bi hu tintin ampa ene corruption no ye hu se e wo ho ye hu se niema e koso. For example, ECG sense me won say ne we have swept it under the carpet janisa because of intim for George ntro bi be nam nti jaka, and that was deliberate action from intim for George. I would de trust an biba cocaine ni ene. He has no evidence to back up his claims. The relevant thing and a can wasem afenoma can and who bon ECG containers a yira yibuno and a jato. That was a tactics by what Reverend Tim Fojo. It by now no ye bisa energy minister ye Samuel Jinapo or Hifa Ombra Bontin Samuel John Jinapo Ombra Bontin na umeyi insimbiano mayu the ecoso energy sector concerning the mixing containers now, because we can't sweep it under the carpet. We can't let it go just Charlie Asika Asika because of Reverend Tim for your baby claims into a just answer me and that is Ghana for you. Ghana somebody and can see beautiful woman. That is the end of the case. They have closed they have closed the docket of the case, and it is not going to be talked about again. Say you na the jat one. Ghana. Introduction for sanity. Medamasi mfanche me nti meso document betum na wa like dwumadi na mame na wa hye na foforo enye bia hwe nti ye hwe ni mu ye maame ye Gertrude Sekidie wara papaya na odo beko efie yo wara papaya na odo beko ahima mu wara papaya na odo beko yankopon hia busia me maame chi ba for hwe me United States of America maame yankopon yo kese maame ro ye bi hwe me UK yankopon hia be maame bibia hwe bia na yankopon koso a enhira o makra o bye bye.